I wanted the criticisms I heard on this movie to be hyperbolic and just be exaggerated. God damn it. So The Running Man is a new Edgar Wright movie, and it is adapting a Stephen King novel. Stephen King novels have been getting adapted like crazy this year. He is having a generational run of adaptations. I hope they're not planning some kind of cinematic universe or some dumb shit like that. I don't think they're doing that. But with Running Man, it is kind of a remake of the first movie, but a readaptation as well, more of an adaptation of the book. Apparently Edgar Wright wanted to make a more accurate version of the book and adapt that for the big screen, and that is what this movie is. And it does have hints of that Edgar Wright flair that we know and love from movies like Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The World's End, Shaun of the Dead. He has had a hot streak. I've never disliked a movie of his. He's one of my favorite directors. I've loved pretty much everything he has made. So with that being said, is with the heavy heart that I didn't love Running Man. I think Running Man is one of those movies where it definitely, I can see the awesome movie in this. I see about 3 awesome movies in here, and I felt like The Running Man could have picked one of the movies to run with. I didn't feel like this movie always had a juggle or a sense of what it wanted to be. At a point, it starts off, you get clear world building, you get good character building with Glenn Powell. He's great in this role. I think he elevates a lot of what the writing doesn't fully deliver on. He brings a lot of charisma to this role. There are moments, though, with the way he's written, where he does come across as unlikable, the way he acts towards other people, especially the other kids. It just didn't come across like a character I would root for or want to root for, even though his intentions are noble. I like the base premise of what he's doing. He's trying to enter this competition to help his kid who's sick, and he'll tell you that about 50 times throughout the movie, because a lot of this movie is tell over show, and a lot of the movie is baseline in its motivations, which, hey, that's simple. I like that. But I feel like the movie could have been as simple as that as well. This movie feels just convoluted at a point. I think the simple setup is great. I think it starts off, and you're being set up for a plot that's interesting, a plot that's simplistic, but in a world where it's kind of dystopian, where you have to give yourself to these systems to get money to help your low-income family in this instance. You can really tackle some cool themes there, and I think really dive into the complexities of what that is. The movie never really does that, though. It just kind of goes for the action movie, which I don't mind. I just don't feel like the movie always had the best juggle of its action sequences. I think there's a lot of great action in this movie, yet it still lacks that Edgar Wright flair that you're wanting from it. It doesn't have that pace to it. I think that's the biggest issue. This movie's pacing. It kind of loses itself halfway through. Starts off simplistic, but then it feels like at a point the movie goes, all right, we have an Act 1, 2, and 3, and we have about 15 methods of how we can take on Act 3. Let's do all of them in one act and make like 4 or 5 acts. It just feels like this movie at a point is not wanting to cut off, and there's so many characters that get introduced by the end, even last minute, that don't get enough screen time to justify why they're here, that by the end, it just kind of comes across like a movie spinning its own wheels. Like at a point, I just kind of lost interest in what was happening, because I didn't feel like this movie had a great juggle of its plot threads. It's so simplistic as it starts out, and then just gets over convoluted. You have Josh Brolin's character, his agenda. You have him trying to save his kid. You have this whole other character that gets introduced, random ass character. It doesn't have much to do with the story overall, but she's just in the movie as almost a mainstay at a point. And the movie never really feels like it has an authentic juggle getting there. It doesn't feel like it earns its place by the end with doing that. You're waiting for it to keep focus, but a lot of it is baseline stuff. In terms of just plot, in terms of just giving us a character to root for, I didn't feel like this movie always had that. I guess what I mean by juggling is that this movie has tonal inconsistency everywhere. Like, it's the first time in an Edgar Wright movie I felt the comedy didn't really land. I didn't feel like this movie needed comedy. There are a lot of points where there's dark subject matter happening, and the movie will try to infuse a joke. It just doesn't always feel like it lands that well. I didn't laugh at the humor in this one, and that is a rarity for me in an Edgar Wright film. It kind of feels like Edgar Wright's style he tried to bring into a narrative that didn't fully support his style, which is odd, because I think Edgar Wright in general is great at juggling that tone. I've never felt out of place comedy in an Edgar Wright movie before. I've also never been bored in an Edgar Wright movie before, and I was very bored throughout the runtime because I was waiting for kind of just something more than what it was giving me to pick up. And I think it comes from the fact that a lot of the stuff in terms of dialogue, in terms of discussing what is driving our main character forward, it's very baseline, very repetitive. Every other scene is Glenn Powell just saying, I did this for my daughter. I have to protect my daughter. That's about all you're gonna get in terms of insight into those characters. The wife in this movie exists to be a wife. That's about it. Which can work. I just felt like we didn't have enough time and chemistry between those two to make that work. Therefore, the movie kind of falls flat in the main motivation we're trying to root for. It's weird because the characters I did enjoy the most, that did have great comedic presence, I don't spend enough time with them to be satisfied. Like Michael Cera. I love Michael Cera in this. It was great seeing him reunite with Edgar Wright after Scott Pilgrim, but his character just at a point has no point. There are characters that are just introduced in this movie to steal screen time away, and the movie does nothing with them after a point. It just doesn't feel as earned. Like, why have all these characters get introduced if we're not going to make them feel relevant by the end? I don't mind a brutal world where things happen to characters that we don't expect, but I still want to feel the impact of that character's presence in the story. I never felt other characters' presences like Michael Cera's. He's crazy. He's a nice sense of chaos in the story. He doesn't bring much to it after that, though. He's in there for a short period of time before we just kind of move on from that character. And I hate it when movies do that, but don't feel justified in it. It's hard to explain this one. This is the first time I'm kind of stumped where it's an Edgar Wright movie and I'm just disappointed by it. So I'm like, I feel like I'm being harsher on it than I need to be, but it's also Edgar Wright. Literally my entire life, I loved every single one of his movies that he's made. I expected this to be another one of them. Disappointment hits that much harder when it's something you're expecting to be great from someone who's only made great. So it hurts that much more than if this was just a simplistic, hey, run-of-the-mill action movie. I don't like that it feels like a run-of-the-mill action movie when it's coming from Edgar Wright himself. And that has nothing to do with the cast. I think the cast in this movie is excellent. I think everyone's doing their job well. Josh Brolin is really good in this movie. I kind of wanted more of him than just him sitting in a room talking. Like, there's a good way to do that. We saw that with Superman and Lex Luthor. I don't feel like this movie pulled off that same achievement when it comes to the hero-villain dynamic, tension, what we want to feel earned with by the end. Like, none of that felt right. And the ending itself, unsatisfying is the best way to describe it. The ending of this movie is cool in concept. It kind of feels like the movie was just spinning its wheels, doing the same things over and over again until the very end. I was like, all right, we need all these plot points we set up, we just need to wrap up and end. Let's just end it here. I feel like the movie just decides to end. It doesn't feel like an earned ending, though. It's like, imagine if you get to the height of a tension point in a moment and then the movie just stops there. Not to deliver on the story, but just to stop and rush to the end. It doesn't feel right. And talk about pace, the movie didn't need to be as long as it did. There's a lot of plot points in this movie that just kind of feel forced in, ham-fisted in. I get it, we're trying to adapt a book. Maybe that stuff was in the book. Sometimes you have to cut things from a book when you're adapting it because it does kill runtime. This movie killed its own runtime so many times. At the end, I came out of this movie bored and sad. I wanted to love it. I really did. I hope people enjoy it. I hope people have a good time with Running Man. It's typically one. This is definitely my least favorite Edgar Wright movie by a long mile. This is the only Edgar Wright movie I don't love. And it just hits that much harder because of it. Thank you so much for watching Scatterbrain Reviews. Leave a like, leave a comment. I'm tired. Goodbye.